All right. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to 15 Minutes with Lori. This morning, we're going to talk buyers. The first thing that I want to talk about, though, is the very first thing that we need to discuss with potential buyers and sellers. And that happens to be the Missouri Broker Disclosure Form, of course. So the Broker Disclosure Form is required by Missouri law, not by the MREC, not by SLAR, not by anybody like that. It's strictly a Missouri requirement. So with, let's see, I'm gonna mute here. So with the Missouri Broker Disclosure Form, of course, there are options for buyers and sellers on representation. And our company does not offer transaction broker at this time, but you do need to know what transaction brokerage is. And that is, you are not representing anybody. You are basically the liaison between buyer and seller, and you're neutral. So you can't give any advice. You can just strictly go over the contract, it's their decision, whatever they feel the need to do is, okay? Now, we do designated agency, which is very important to understand the difference between designated agents and seller and buyer agents. So let's say I have a buyer. As a designated agent, I am the only one who is representing that buyer, okay? Nobody else. If I were just a buyer's agent, everyone in the company would be representing that buyer as well. And the problem with that is because we are a larger company, some might think we're small, but we think we're pretty big. And so if another agent in our company had a listing and they were representing the seller as a seller's agent, not a designated agent, but a seller's agent, it would be automatically dual agency. And so we want to try to avoid that because both parties would be represented by both agents. So that's why designated agency is so important, because then you are the only one representing that buyer or the only one representing that seller. As you should know, the brokers, though, we do represent both sides. Even if someone in the company was a designated seller's agent and somebody was a designated buyer's agent, you're representing your own. But when the brokers have to get involved, we have to be careful because we are dual agents at that time, okay? Now, if it's outside the company, that would not be dual agency, of course. So are there any questions about the Missouri Broker Disclosure Form? Okay, then we'll go ahead and move on. Good morning, Norm. How are you?
Good.
Everybody, say good morning to Norm.
Good morning, everybody.
Yes.
Welcome.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning, Norm.
Nurse,
Yes.
broker, currently one of the brokers, and nice to have you guys with us.
Yes. We're on 15 Minutes with Lori this morning.
You on that?
We sure? No? Okay, you can have a seat if you want. Okay. So then I want to talk a little bit about the buyer's agency agreement, since we are talking about buyers. Specifically, the section on representing other buyers and previous representation, and then also the failure to close. Can everyone see my screen, the buyer's exclusive agency agreement?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So line 99, representing other buyers. Buyer understands that broker has no duty to represent only buyer, and that broker may represent other prospective buyers who may be interested in purchasing or leasing the same property or properties that buyer is interested in acquiring, subject to Missouri law. So you need to make sure, if you have two different buyers and they both want to see the same property, you cannot disclose to those buyers that you are representing someone else who's interested in the home. So things like, oh yeah, I showed that property at 10 o'clock this morning. Don't do that when you're representing those two buyers separately, okay? Anything that you say could be used against you, basically, if you aren't careful about what you're saying. So just be cautious of that. Previous representation. Buyer understands that the broker may have previously represented the seller from whom buyer wishes to purchase the property. During that representation, the buyer may have learned material information about the seller that is considered confidential. Under the law, broker may not disclose any such confidential information to the buyer. So let's say you had a listing and it expired and you knew everything about that seller. And then after it expired, they went and listed it with someone else. Now you have a buyer for that home. You cannot share confidential information that you know about that seller, okay? Now, if there's material facts about the property, we're obligated to disclose, okay? Any questions with that?
What's a material fact?
A material fact might be something that is wrong with property, you know? I'm sorry? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, okay? So failure to close, if an owner of an agreement let me back up. If an owner of an agreement made on behalf of buyer fails to close such agreement with no fault on the part of the buyer, buyer shall have no obligation to pay the compensation provided for above. However, if such transaction fails to close because of any fault on the part of the buyer, such compensation will not be waived, but will be due and payable immediately. In no case shall the broker be obligated to advance funds for the benefit of the buyer in order to complete the closing, okay? So now you've got to be careful with this one. You know, buyers do need to understand that when they are committing to a contract, it's a legal binding document and they need to fulfill the agreement. Let's say they don't get they don't get their loan commitment by their loan commitment date and they get a denial. You're not due a compensation, okay? If the inspections take place and it does not get worked out between buyer and seller according to the terms of the contract, no compensation will be due. So, you know, so you got to be careful about this. So if buyer gets to closing and says, oh, not closing for no reason. However, to fight that is difficult because sometimes the buyers don't have the money. And so if you have an instance in this case, please talk to your managing broker, talk to myself, talk to Mark there, talk to Bill Stanek, and we can help you through the situation, okay? Any questions about that? Any comments? Okay, so moving on, I want to talk about the conversations that we can have with buyers and sellers for that matter, and anyone that you are acquainted with, your sphere of influence, your friends, your family, your neighbors. Don't forget your neighbors, everybody. It's called F.O.R.D, and you can some people call it F.O.R.D, but I'll explain in just a second. F.O.R.D stands for family, occupation, recreation, and dreams, okay? So how is the family? How's your job? What are you doing for fun this summer? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? And we have a script that outlines this, but you've got to have another reason why you're calling. It's not just this. That's the meat of your conversation, the F.O.R.D, but you've got to have a reason. So if it's introducing yourself as an agent, it's merely, the reason for my call is I'm excited to share that I've joined Call a Banker Premier Group, and now you have a realtor that you can rely on. And then, you know, it could be something else. It could be a birthday. It could be, you know, the birth of a child. It could be a graduation, anything. Use anything as a reason. You can get onto your social media platforms and see the first 4 or 5 posts, and there's a reason to reach out to everyone. And that voice to voice is powerful. I've shared with many of you before. I'm going to share it again because it does speak loudly. Probably now about 5 or 6 years ago, I received a phone call on my birthday from my bank teller to wish me a happy birthday. She had absolutely no reason to have to call me to do that, but she picked up the phone that day and called me because she saw it on Facebook. We all get, you know what, 2, 3, 4, 500 happy birthdays on Facebook. Do we really know who actually all the people were that said those happy birthdays? I mean, you know them, but you don't remember who did it. But that phone call was powerful. So this conversation can be done with anyone. even with your current clients. So when you bring a buyer in, and we recommend that you sit down and have a face-to-face conversation with them, consulting on the buyer process. And the first thing you should do is get to know them, okay? Use this F.O.R.D. FROG stands for Family, Occupation, Recreation, and Goals. So either goals or dreams, whichever you want to do. This script is in dotloop in the Agent Resource tab for you, along with other scripts. Is there any questions about the initial conversation with everyone before I continue on? Any comments? Okay, we'll keep moving along then. The last thing I want to talk about is when you're sitting down with your buyers, you need to talk to them about their needs and wants and define the difference between those needs and wants. In the past, when I sold, and I don't sell anymore, but in the past when I sold and I sat down with my buyers, I asked them to write down 6 things that they want in a house. Not what they need, but what they want in a house. And that's on top of price and location. The price and location, that's a given. That's something that is the most important to our buyers, right? So on top of that, have them write down 6 things that they want. After they're done with that, tell them, out of those 6, what do you need? 3 things that they need, just 3. So out of those 6, label 3 things that they don't want to compromise, okay? Because guess what? You're not going to find 100% home for anybody. I remodeled my kitchen last year, and there's things that I wish I would have done different. So nothing's perfect, guys. New construction's not perfect. Old historical fixed up homes are not perfect. You know, no house is ever going to be perfect. And you're not going to find every single thing that they want in a house. Now, do share with them the additional things that they wanted if we find them. If we find them, that's bonus. What you have done now is you have set the right expectations for your buyers, and they will find a home quicker. I know right now it's a seller's market, and it is a little tough for the buyers, but using this information will help ease your buyer. Of course, always make sure that you contact a lender to get them pre-approved. If they have a lender, great, but have one on hand. Christy would be more than happy with Heartland Mortgage Lending to sit down with you if she knows the time, okay? Any other questions?
One of the things that I discovered in determining needs and wants, so they would all say, buyers will say, I need a fireplace, and I need a 3-car garage, and I need this, and I need that. And I would say to them, let's say that you found the perfect house for me, but it didn't have a fireplace. What would you do? And they would say, well, we wouldn't buy it. I say, why? Because of the fireplace. You know not to show them houses without fire. So that's a real need for them. So defining that is real important, because you could be running around forever until you really know what their needs are.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. That's absolutely true. And you know, the number of beds and baths are important, but they're not as important as the buyer thinks. The thing is, we need to ask the right questions, okay, and set the right expectations. Let's say they say, I need a 4-bedroom home, okay? Tell me a little bit about that. You know, what's the need for the fourth bedroom? Because I know that you have 2 children. Well, they say, you know, well, we do have the 2 children. We want them in separate bedrooms. And then my husband or I work at home. Well, what if we found a 3-bedroom home that had an office in the basement, or that had a room in the basement that could be used as an office, or even a little nook somewhere in the lower level or in the house? And they will say, well, yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so let's do 3 bedrooms then, okay? Because the more criteria you put in there, the fewer homes you are going to find for them. Okay, so set the right expectations for everyone. We're at 16 after. If you all have any further questions, please reach out to me or reach out to Bill or Mark, and we can help you out with that. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Lori.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.